So Parag, shall we start?
I think sure. It's 11 to
Yeah,
now.
it's 11:02. I think we should start.
Yeah. Okay. So good morning, everyone. If you happen to be in a different time zone, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Parag Kulkarni from EliteCISOs. Before I touch upon the agenda for today and details of it, I think let me spare a few minutes on talking about EliteCISOs, its initiatives, and then we'll deep dive into this session. So as far as EliteCISOs goes, you might have already guessed is one of the fastest growing cybersecurity communities. But it is, let me tell you, it is much beyond that. It is just not a group of people who are coming here for collaborating for cybersecurity initiatives, but it does much beyond that. So let me just quickly share my screen to take you through the EliteCISOs website. You should be able to see it. This is EliteCISO's website. So EliteCISOs, as I said, it is much beyond the cybersecurity community, but it purely works on a theme for CISOs by CISOs. So as far as the membership goes, we are keeping it limited only to the cybersecurity professional who are into the leadership roles. They are into the CIO or CISO position to make sure that the purpose is met. So there are many groups wherein the vendors are added or the consultants are added, and it really deviates the purpose of the group. That is what we have been seeing. That's why for EliteCISOs, since it is for CISOs by CISOs, we are keeping limited only to the leadership positions into the cybersecurity field. Now, going back to the EliteCISOs initiatives, as you can see, we are here today for one of the enriching session, knowledge sharing sessions on SASE. But like that, we have so many initiatives going on where we make sure that we are able to deliver premier contents to cybersecurity communities. So if you go through the events section on the website, you can see that every week we have something going on. So every Thursday, typically we have sessions going on. That's where we stand today. We'll be talking about demystifying SASE, that is Secure Access Service Edge. That is the session for today. And like that, every Thursday we have some sessions going on. We do also have trainings which are typically arranged over the weekends. Those are uh, directed towards various cybersecurity initiatives or regulations to help community to build their knowledge. Beyond that, although it is cybersecurity community, so we are expected to talk only about security, but we do much beyond that. What is that? We typically uh, have some sessions going on around to encourage women's involvement in cybersecurity, right? As we know that cybersecurity needs strong leaders. So if you can see on the page, we have so many leaders who are part of EliteCISOs group, who are encouraging, or they are basically a face of empowering women in cybersecurity field. So that is one of the initiatives. Another initiatives we are extremely engaged with is the fitness one, right? If you can again see, and I'm sure you'll really get tired if you read all these stories on the website. If you can take out your time and see that EliteCISOs is again heavily engaged into the fitness stuff. It could be 300 days fitness, or it could be 100 days running challenge, or as good as today being a Thursday doing the fasting, right? So these are the group members who are actively engaged, and there are other encouraging others to make sure that we are also looking at the vulnerabilities inside us. We are also making sure the risk to our health are being assessed. It is not that we are just only talk about cybersecurity. We extremely take care of our health also, right? Because unless we are secure or we are safe, then only we can do well in our roles. That's where we acknowledge that health is also important. And as you can see, and I also suggest that if you are one of those who love taking challenges, you can also stand like me for the entire session, and not only this session, but in the future session also. Believe me, it is tough if you see at the first instance, but if you really do it, it really benefits. So that's where I suggest you can also stand and get engaged in various fitness initiatives. Let me quickly talk about the membership of EliteCISOs group. So if you can go through the EliteCISOs homepage, there is a membership option. You can fill in your details, but again, make sure that if you're one of those CISOs or CIR roles, then only we get you involved into the EliteCISOs group, right? As far as EliteCISOs group goes, we have 8 chapters. They are running extensive programs in cybersecurity field. But in the current situation, we are focusing more on the webinars, and this session is one of them. But if you happen to be not a CI or CISO or a cybersecurity role, you can still go to the subscribe option. You can subscribe there, and you will be notified on various initiatives of EliteCISO. So you can go there and subscribe yourself. Now, quickly going back to the events today, I welcome here Riaz from Palo Alto Network to deliver today's session. It is on demystifying SASE. So SASE, you might have heard, it's a hot topic. I believe the Gartner had introduced this term maybe a year back, not that much older also, but it has really taken up the pace, and it has become a buzzword today. In today's session, Riaz will be helping us letting know what is SASE is actually, right? Really, it is just a buzzword, or it is really going to help us in our area and really build our defenses across this technology. Riaz will also help us knowing that how do we implement SASE, right? What could be pros and cons, and how effectively we can have our existing security portfolio developed, wherein we are able to leverage SASE in our environment. So I won't spend much time here. I'll sign off here, and I'll hand over the session formally to Riaz. Just to let you know, at the end of session, we'll have 10 to 15 minutes session for address question and answers. We have questions collected well before the session, and during the session also you may have questions that you can post it on the Q&A section, and we'll have last 15 minutes there to address your question. And don't log off after that also, because we have a lucky winner to be declared at the end of the session. So stay tuned, and I'm sure you'll find this session very enriching. So over to you, Riaz. Thanks.
Thank you, Parag, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Let me just quickly share, if you can allow me to share my deck. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I hope, first of all, everyone can see my screen. Oops. Can someone just acknowledge?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. Cool. So, hi, everyone. My name is Riaz. I am the director for system engineering, which basically is the pre-sales consultancy team for Palo Networks in India and SARC. Today, I'm going to talk about SASE. The idea of this session, again, is to probably give you a little bit of deep dive as to what SASE is all about and how is it relevant in today's times. That's the whole objective. I'll try and wrap this, the deck that I have prepared for this session in probably 35 to 40 minutes, which will probably give us around 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. So I'll appreciate if you can keep your questions for towards the end. All right, so quickly getting into it, right? Setting the agenda and setting the context here. It's, what I'll do is quickly take you through some of the challenges that we currently see, because of which SASE becomes relevant for us. And I personally believe, every technology that we adopt has to be relevant. If it's not relevant for us, it does not make any sense. I'll also touch base about what's Palo Alto Networks' approach in solving some of those challenges that I will talk about. It's also important to identify use cases. So I'll share some of the use cases based on our experience and based on what customers are telling us. I'll also, probably get into a little bit of architectural discussions with regards to the solution, how it's designed, and what are some of the key things and key differentiators with regards to the architecture. And then again, what is the business value? Ultimately, it also needs to add to the value of the business, right? So that's the agenda. So quickly getting into it, right? So what are the trends which are actually driving the adoption of SASE before I get into the definition of SASE? Now, what we're seeing is a couple of major trends, right? And these, why do I say major? Because every customer that we speak to, or everyone that we get or rather we get engaged with, these are the common challenges, or I would rather say these are the common thoughts that everyone has these days, right? The first is cloud adoption, right? I think as part of digital transformation, cloud adoption has become inevitable, right? I've seen customers rewriting applications where application modernization is happening, and because of which what is happening is a lot of data which at one point of time used to reside within the limits of our data centers is now sitting on the cloud in different form factors. It could be sitting in maybe one of the public cloud providers, or maybe you're subscribed to maybe a SaaS service, maybe Office 365 or Gmail or anything else, right? I mean, there are so many different solutions out there. So point is, and that's what a lot of industry reports are also saying, right? We see that almost everyone, 94% is a very high number, and this is again still data based on 2019. We are leveraging cloud in some way or the other, right? Which basically means we are in a situation where a lot of our data, depending on where you are in that curve, there is some form which is currently sitting in the cloud. The other important trend which you see is remote user mobility, which has sort of like is augmented because of the current COVID scenario. I mean, in the recent past, I've personally got in touch with organizations which never had a remote access policy. They never allowed users to access resources from home. But no one perceived that a situation like COVID will happen, and unfortunately, it is a sorry state. But then we had to adapt, right? We had to adapt, and we did. The industry understood the importance of allowing users to work remotely, and again, based on certain in the current times, based on certain reports and studies, what we see is a lot of these workforces will be working permanently remotely, right? I mean, many organizations have already announced that they'll have a certain section of the employee workforce always working from home or maybe working remotely. So that's the trend that we see. The other thing which I mentioned earlier on is digital transformation, right? Things are getting digitized. We want there is connectivity that we need to make sure that is always available to users, irrespective of where they are. They can be sitting remote, they can be sitting in our branches. And if you ask me right now, the entire globe is a global workforce for us, right? And that's where we see that how do we make sure that if you have a very, very diverse and distributed environment, how do we make sure that we connect it in an efficient manner without compromising on security, and also making sure that the user experience is maintained. And that's where as per Gartner, again, based on a report which Gartner published last year, by the year 2024, 60% of enterprises will be using SD-WAN, right? So that brings us to this, right? And in this journey of digital transformation, right, it's important to think of architectures. And the reason I say architecture is mainly because, if you look at point solutions, and if you look at trying to solve a specific problem at a given point of time over a period of time, what happens is it becomes very, very complex, right? I've seen environments where there was a need for remote access, so they started with remote access, and then there was a need for allowing users to access the internet in a secure manner, so they invested into a cloud proxy or maybe a web proxy solution. And then something like Gmail or maybe some other SaaS application, maybe like a GitHub or maybe a Salesforce or something else, is being provisioned for users, which basically means they also need to look at a CASB solution, and then also making sure that with the advent of SD-WAN coming in, allowing branches to connect in a specific manner to make sure that they can allow users to connect from anywhere and allow branches to connect from anywhere. What happens is it becomes a very, very complex environment. And on top of that, as CISOs, right? I mean, the one challenge that you always face is how do we make sure that the risk is taken care of, right? How do we make sure that it's completely secure, irrespective of what type of connectivity, what type of solutions are being used, and how users are connecting. And as I mentioned, right, because and I think we are in a classic example. In this pandemic, users are connecting from everywhere, right? So if you are using, if users are connecting from multiple different locations, now sitting at home and all that, how do you take care of security? How do you make sure that your risk is controlled? So the idea is, how do we simplify this? How do we make sure that we enhance the overall, objective? How do we enhance our methodology to make sure that we can have a very robust path towards digital transformation, right? And because that's the need of the hour. So keeping that in mind, again, one of the things which everyone is talking about right now, and as I mentioned, right, cloud adoption and mobile workforce and all that, times have changed, right? And we all agree to it. Times have changed mainly because there was a time when almost 80 to 90% of data was residing within the walls of our data centers, within the walls of our enterprise. But now with the advent of cloud technologies and SaaS technologies, what has happened is, data has now moved out, right? So depending on what industry you belong to, depending on the adoption curve, we see that anywhere from maybe 100%, because I've known organizations which have 100% data sitting on the cloud, to maybe 20-30%, depending on the vertical that you are. So data is outside, right? Data is, when I say outside, I mean it's in the cloud. It's in some form, either in a cloud, public cloud environment, or in a SaaS environment. With that, what happens is, how do you take care of security, right? How do you make sure that first of all, proper connectivity is maintained, or rather, provided, and then also make sure that the connectivity, that whatever is provided, is also safe and secure. And that's where Gartner came up with this report, where they first coined this term called Secure Access Service Edge, which is nothing but when you're accessing so many resources which are actually sitting outside of the boundaries of your environment, which is in the public cloud environment, which is sitting in your SaaS environments and maybe mobile workforces. What makes more sense is something which is cloud delivered. Something which is cloud delivered, which allows you, first of all, to make sure that your access, a proper access or medium to connect resources from wherever they are. It could be mobile users, it could be branches, it could be connected to data sitting on the cloud or in a SaaS environment, and then also making sure that it's completely secure. So there are two elements to it, and that's what I'll talk about, right? There are two elements to SASE. One is the networking component of it, which is basically, how do I connect? How do I make sure that my connectivity is safe and secure? And the other aspect of is the security part of it. Why? Because let's take an example, right? If my critical application or whatever application was sitting in my data center, right? Traditional designs that we've always followed over the past years is that we always have some security layers, or in fact, multiple security layers before somebody can access it. And it's not just connectivity, but it's also inspection. There's a lot of inspection also happening to make sure that nothing untoward happens as far as our data is concerned, or rather nothing is compromised when users try to access our resources. Similarly, when why do we need to compromise on that specifically when the times have changed? Why? Because, as I said, cloud adoption. I'm re-emphasizing on these things is because that's the reason why technologies like these have evolved, right? And that's what we see currently. We are seeing such trends where more and more adoption on the cloud is happening. So it's all about providing a cloud delivered service which provides you network as a service, which basically means connectivity. It allows you to connect in a secure manner. It could be using IPsec, it could be using SSL, it could be using SD-WAN, because when it comes to branches connecting to headquarters, and when you have a very distributed environment, SD-WAN is something which provides a lot of value, and also making sure that user experience is maintained. So it's all about network as a service, and on top of that, also make sure that it's completely secure, which basically means security as a service, which basically means provide all the capabilities which we had as part of our architectures, considering that if that application was sitting in my data center, I would have whatever different layers. Similarly, just because my application now or my data now resides externally, the reason I use the term externally is because it's a shared infrastructure, right? Public cloud or SaaS, it's a shared infrastructure where the providers will take care of their infrastructure, but ultimately the responsibility of the data resides with you, right? So you've got to take care of your data, right? And that's where security becomes a very important aspect. So things like making sure that you have the right inspection policies, and that's where things like firewall as a service, and firewall not just means IP and ports, it means application-based policies, threat prevention policies, base zero attack prevention, things like those, adding DNS capabilities, even DLP, right? I mean, just because my applications are now sitting on a cloud environment, I still need to make sure that I have, so whatever policy that I had an on-prem environment needs to be available in a cloud environment also, but in a different architecture, but in a different way, to make sure that I am able to get the value of the solution, right? Otherwise, it does not make sense. So that's what Prisma Access does. Our solution is called something called as Prisma Access. It's our cloud delivered service, which is the most comprehensive SASE solution. Again, it's a secure access, secure edge service, which is completely cloud delivered. So with Prisma Access, what you get is the same two things. It is network as a service layer, which basically means you have network as a service, and you have security as a service, which basically means you can use multiple different methods to connect your workforce, which can be residing maybe, which may be globally distributed, maybe working from home, maybe roaming around, or maybe connect your branches or interconnect branches or connect your branches to data center, or other. Let me put it this way: make sure that you have connectivity in the right manner to your data, which may be residing in multiple different places, be it public cloud, be it SaaS, and make sure that it's available to your employees irrespective of where they are. That's the whole point. And on top of that, make sure that it's completely safe and secure. So there should not be any compromises, right? That's the whole point. And that's the reason why this group that we have today, which is the CISOs, that's the most important one. I mean, there should not be any kind of risk, just because, we are adopting something which is cloud delivered. So our job is to make sure that we provide you that secure connectivity, and also make sure that we provide the best of security as far as SASE is concerned. Now, there are a couple of use cases that I'd like to touch base upon, right? I mean, these are use cases which we've seen very, very common. Why? Because a lot of customers are talking about it. A lot of environments have already adopted some of these. There can be multiple other use cases also, depending, because every environment is very different, right? Every environment can be very, very different. But these are the three most common ones that we've seen. But I still believe there can be different use cases. But I'll just iterate upon these three because, in our conversations, in my conversation specifically with customers, these are three main ones that come in. First is the mobile users, right? I mean, and I think this got augmented because of the pandemic. People, as I said at the start of my session, right? I mean, I've personally seen organizations which never had a work from home policy, which never allowed users to work from wherever they are. But now they've allowed it, which basically means they're allowing connectivity for users to connect from wherever they are, which I think is the need of the hour. But also make sure that it's safe and secure. And also, a lot of customers are asking that if my user is sitting remotely, how do I make sure that we maintain the zero trust? So zero trust becomes more important. Why? Because, so users are remote, we don't know what devices they're connecting from where are they connecting from and all that. So zero trust becomes very, very important. So one of the, I'll touch base upon zero trust in more detail going forward. The second thing that we've also seen is, SD-WAN, where, because, I mean, one typical problem that we saw, traditionally was that because a lot of data was sitting in the data centers, the most common connectivity was MPLS. Why? Because that's what provided you with a private connectivity from your branches to your data centers, right? Or to your headquarters, whatever. Now, because now that the data now sits on the cloud, MPLS's networks have become irrelevant, right? Why? The reason is not that it does not provide you the connectivity, but it does not make sense to have MPLS when my resource is sitting on the cloud. And on top of that, SD-WAN gives you the ability where the same private network can be achieved and the same user experience can be maintained. One of the reasons why people never adopted internet for branch connectivity. Why? Because they were dependent on IPsec, and there were always questions on availability, and there were always questions on the user experience. So I think all that is now taken care by SD-WAN, and that's where a lot of companies, a lot of organizations have started adopting SD-WAN. So that becomes a very important use case. The third one, which you've seen also, is mergers and acquisitions. When a company acquires another company or merges with another company, there are two distinct environments which now need to work together. And that's from an operations point of view, from a network operation and security operations point of view, it's a nightmare. Why? Because the acquisition happens, and within weeks or maybe a few months, it is expected that two organizations will work like one. Now we all know, right, that redesigning architectures, redesigning network and security, designs or architectures is very, very difficult. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a few weeks or a couple of months. It takes time. So in a scenario like this, how do we make sure that we create that secure layer which provides you that layer that provides you that connectivity first of all, and also make sure that everything is safe and secure? So these are some of the use cases that we've seen. Just to share, I spoke about the mobile use cases. There was a recent study done by Okta. Okta is a very well-known two-factor authentication solution, IDaaS solution. What they published was the fastest growing applications that they see users are using is obviously Zoom because of their video conferencing capability. But the second one is Global Protect, which is Palo Alto solution, right? Which is part of the Prisma Access solution. And the point which I'm trying to drive here is we've seen a huge uptake, where In the current times, we've seen a lot of you. I mean, we've got organizations with thousands of users, and I'm not talking about a few thousands here, 5 or 10,000. I'm talking about 100,000, 80,000, 150,000 users connecting via our Prisma Access solution, right? So I just thought I'd also share this because there are others also who are, who are sharing this as part of the studies. Now, as I said, I mean, the three typical challenges or compromises that we've seen mainly is a full tunnel VPN, split tunnel, and cloud proxy, and I'll talk about it. I mean, obviously, I mean, the point that I'm trying to drive here is, and the reason why SASE becomes important, because there was a time when data was sitting in the data centers, and at that point of time, the most common way by which you allowed access to remote users were having a VPN concentrator like solution, or maybe a firewall doing the job of a VPN concentrator, sitting at the edge of your data center and allowing users to connect remotely to access your data, to access your resources sitting in a data center. Now, since the applications or the data has now moved to the cloud, right? I mean, not all, but maybe a few, and it all depends on the industry that you're in, right? Since applications are now sitting on the cloud, it does not make sense to backhaul the traffic to the data center, right? If the user is remote, and if he's already on the internet, he or she is already on the internet, why does the user have to come back to the data center to actually connect to the resources which are actually hosted on the cloud, right? It makes more sense to actually get them connected directly, right? So that's a typical problem that we have with full tunnel VPNs, and a lot of customers are still using these, which we believe that there is a better way of allowing users to connect, which overall enhances the user experience and without compromising on security, right? That's and also making sure that there is proper uptime and resilience provided. So that's one of the challenge that we've seen with full VPN approaches. Why? Because now data resides on the cloud, and backhauling traffic does not make sense. The other thing is split tunnels. I mean, a lot of customers talk about, oh, I'm using split tunnel. It basically means my users are accessing cloud resources directly. But that's a security issue, right? That's a security risk. The main reason being, whatever is coming back to your data center is going to be encrypted. But we all know, right? The moment we talk about split tunnels, all the traffic which goes to the split tunnel is not encrypted and it's not inspected, right? So the challenge is, first of all, that becomes the mobile device of the user, right? Can become a backdoor to your environment. And on top of that, there is no layer of security, or there's no inspection happening for the split tunnel traffic which is going out of your mobile devices, right? So this again becomes a challenge. The other approach that a lot of customers also talk about is cloud proxy approach, which basically means, what I will do is I will use a cloud proxy to connect to the cloud and the internet. Why? Because most of the resources are now sitting in the cloud. And then all through the cloud proxy, I will try and access my resources sitting in the data center also. I mean, if there are some resources sitting in the data center. Now, the challenge with this approach is, first of all, cloud proxies are mainly specific to web traffic. Not all ports and protocols are inspected. Many times it's only providing a layer of connectivity and allowing certain URLs or not allowing certain URLs. That's what it does. But as I mentioned, right, in any environment, right, there is traffic beyond just web traffic, right? Like, for example, right, the most common question or the most common thing that we see nowadays is DNS, right? How do you inspect DNS in an environment like that, right? So things like those are there. And on top of that, one of the challenges that we've also seen is your data plane when it comes to cloud proxy. As I mentioned, right, cloud generally is a shared environment. But if you're using a multi-tenant architecture for users to connect, to the cloud proxy, it becomes a challenge. And the challenge that there are two challenges. One is if it's the same, if it's a multi-tenant environment, it basically means there are two different environments connecting to the same resources. There is always a chance that one of the environments can overwhelm the other, which basically means you can be starved for resources because it's a multi-tenant architecture as far as data plane is concerned. The other important thing is, which is again we've seen in the industry today, is since it's a multi-tenant architecture, which basically means you're using shared resources and probably using one egress IP address to the internet or whatever it is, just because, and there are multiple customers sitting behind that IP address. If for whatever reason, because of some other traffic, that IP gets blacklisted, your traffic also gets blacklisted. So the point that I'm trying to drive is, these are challenges that we have seen when adopting cloud proxy approaches. And that's why we see that, what we need is, again, a complete, a proper cloud delivered security solution, network and security solution. And that's what we do. Prisma Access is basically our firewall as a service, which is delivered to you as a service. We are not limited to inspecting only web traffic. We can inspect anything, because It doesn't matter whether it's web traffic or any other, independent of ports and protocols. We can do that. We can scale. The most important piece when it comes to a cloud delivered solution is scale. And I'll give you some examples of how we've been able to scale from hundreds to thousands of users, or maybe bandwidth from a few hundred to gigs of traffic, depending on what the need is. So the point here is it needs to be automated. It needs to be orchestrated in the right manner to allow you ease of operations. That's something that we already have. And the most important thing, it should take care of zero trust network architecture, right? I mean, it's important that zero trust be part of it. The reason is when it comes to mobile users, when it comes to remote branches, we want to make sure that everything is trusted, and we want to make sure that there is no compromise happening as far as our security is concerned. So that's the approach that we have. Now, just to double click on zero trust network architecture. Generally, what is zero trust, right? Let me just quickly touch base. And generally, a lot of customers also ask me, what is the difference between a VPN connectivity and zero trust network architectures, right? Now, zero trust is, traditional VPN. What it does is once you connect to a VPN solution, based on once you're authenticated and all that, you get access to a complete environment, which basically means so let's say if you have a VPN solution connecting to your data center or your headquarters, the moment a user is authenticated, the user will access to everything within the data, within the LAN and all that. That's what VPN does, right? Whereas zero trust network architecture is all about making sure that we take into consideration the identity of the user. We take into consideration who the user is, and based on who the user is, we provide the user with access to a specific application, right? Maybe the user only has access to 1, 2, or 3 different applications, not just the complete environment. So that's what a zero trust is all about. Zero trust is all about making sure that we allow users to connect to the resources that they are supposed to access, right? That's what zero trust is all about. But one of the challenges that we've seen, and this is again, an understanding of, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but it's important to understand that zero trust network architecture, it's not just about allowing access to certain resources based on the identity of the user or based on who the user is or where is the user coming from, right? What also needs to happen is inspection. Unfortunately, when a lot of other people talk about zero trust, they only talk about access. It's only about providing access to a user, depending on who the user is and from where he is coming from, allowing him access to a certain set of resources that he's supposed to access. But the important part is there also needs to be inspection. We need to make sure that the traffic that the user is accessing is completely inspected for anything which is untoward. Also, the device that the user is coming from is completely risk-free. There is no risk that it comes with. And also make sure that all the capabilities that we talk about. One of the common things that I'll talk about is SSL inspection, right? One of the challenges, most of the traffic now on the internet is encrypted, right? It's all SSL. Now, in an SSL environment, generally that's the blind spot for a lot of security solutions. Unless and until you do SSL decryption, you can't see what's happening with it. So it's important that when we talk about zero trust, it's not just about providing access to resources. It's also making sure that when users try to access those resources, it's inspected for anything. It could be worms, viruses, malwares, day zero attacks, whatever it is. It needs to be inspected properly. And that's the whole context of zero trust. And that's what Prisma Access provides from a zero trust perspective. So just to put it into notion, these are the different capabilities that we provide. We provide not just connectivity from an to an application or to a service. We also provide inspection capabilities like malware and exploit detection, credential thefts. DLP is part of the solution. It's again, we have a centralized management, and we use multiple different ways, and we can also do decryption. By the way, I mean we can do decryption on the solution to make sure that we can inspect all different types of traffic. And this is a small comparison of zero trust and traditional VPN, and this is what Prisma Access delivers to you from an overall point of view. So quickly touch basing on the other use case of SD-WAN. This is again something which I spoke about. When resources were sitting in your data centers, it was easy. It was all about providing backhaul connectivity using IPsec or MPLS. Most common is MPLS because that provides a private network to you, allowing you to connect thousands or hundreds of your branches to your data centers, which basically means users can now access your critical resources sitting in your data centers. But now, since a lot of it is already on the cloud, right? How do you manage that? It does not make sense and a lot of times there is no internet at the branch, mainly for the purpose of, let it be centralized, right? Because as it is, all my data is here, right? So I'm going to connect to my data center and then access the internet from here. And that's the reason why there was no internet. Now, because we see that a lot of data also, it's not just internet traffic, but data also moves to the public cloud environment, or maybe a cloud delivered solution, or maybe a SaaS or whatever it is, it does not make sense to backhaul. And then on top of that, MPLS, again, we all know that it's expensive, but yes, it does provide us with a private experience. It does provide us with a backhaul connectivity, right? So the idea is that we provide you the same ability using newer technology like SD-WAN, and also making sure that give you the same level of security so that your risk is maintained, plus your overall experience from a user point of view is also maintained, plus also reducing the cost of MPLS, right? That's the whole point. So using SD-WAN, so the point which I'm trying to drive here is Prisma Access also provides a very comprehensive SD-WAN solution. As I said, SASE is all about network access and security, right? As part of network, we also have a very, very comprehensive, Prisma Access has a very, very comprehensive SD-WAN solution, which is part of it, and security also is part of it, which basically means it takes care of both the aspects of SASE. Now, the SD-WAN solution comes to us through CloudGenX, which is an acquisition that we did a couple of quarters back. And one of the important things about CloudGenX is that, which is again part of Prisma Access now. It's part of that's a comprehensive, CloudGenX along with Prisma Access is a comprehensive solution that we provide. It allows you, first of all, a very an active environment, which basically means you have multiple WAN at your branches. It allows you to use both the WANs or maybe more. Maybe you might have 2, 3, 4 different types of WANs, depending on where your branches are and depending on what your redundancies, all that. But the point is, we can use whatever WAN that you have, WAN links that you have, to make sure that all the links are properly used. We provide you with, one of the use cases that we also seen customers do is mainly who are geographically distributed. They want to do something called as geofencing, which basically means they want to make sure that users only accesses resources which are in a specific location throughout the globe. So that is something that we also provide. We allow you to define policies based for specific applications. That's again very, very crucial from an SD-WAN point of view. The reason is it's very important is mainly because to make sure that the overall user experience has to be maintained. So when a user is trying to access an application, the user experience need to be maintained or rather enhanced, right? So one of the things that we can also do is make sure that if you say, for example, you have 2 or 3 different WAN links for a specific application, maybe use one link for something else, maybe use something else, depending on what are whatever parameters that we monitor for the link, and make sure that we provide you with the correct uptime and experience from an overall SD-WAN perspective. So these are some of the benefits, and on top of that, make sure that it's completely safe and secure, right? The things that I spoke about. So that's how we provide you a complete SD-WAN solution also along with security. And the last thing which I mentioned was mergers and acquisitions, which is again, the nightmare is when you have 2 distinct environments, and overnight what happens is the CEOs announce that the company is getting merged. Just to share, we last night announced one of our new acquisitions. We acquired a new company called Expanse, which is basically looking at threats from an external point of view to an organization. So for example, if you have your resources, maybe endpoints, maybe whatever users who are on the internet, how do you know whether when they are on the internet they are safe or not, right? So that's what Expanse does. But that's an acquisition that we did, which basically means overnight the CEOs announce that 2 environments need to merge or something is acquired. Now, how do you make sure that these 2 environments merge, right? You can't re-architect overnight. You can't change things overnight. And that's where we've seen, and this is a very important use case. Why? Because we've seen environments where 2 companies merge or one gets acquired, and they use Prisma Access to make sure that there is proper segmentation, and without major re-architecturing, without major overhauling of the network and the security layer, they can simply leverage Prisma Access to make sure that they can start leveraging resources, and the whole acquisition goes smoothly. So that's again one of the use cases that we've seen. I'll quickly touch base on the architecture. I'm just taking a check on the time. From a Prisma Access point of view, first of all, it's a completely cloud delivered solution, right? We are globally distributed 100 different locations across the globe and present in 76 different countries, which basically we've got POP locations in 76 different countries. and 100 different locations. So if you're geographically distributed, we allow you to connect irrespective of where you are, right? That's the power of the solution, right? As I said, we inspect everything. It's not a solution which only inspects or uses or sees certain types of traffic. It's a firewall architecture, which basically means we see everything, we inspect everything, and allow you that performance. That's very important. That's where single pass architecture comes in. Single pass architecture is our technology which we leverage to make sure that we allow you to leverage multiple different solutions from us, which is, threat prevention, maybe day zero attack prevention, maybe, things like malware prevention, exploit prevention, all those different things, and maintaining performance, right? Without compromising on performance. That's what we do. We inspect all traffic. From a management point of view, it's a multi-tenant solution. And as I said, we don't compromise on data plane, which basically means your actual traffic. When it comes to the user traffic, actual user traffic, it's a separate tenant altogether. It's not a multi-tenant architecture from a data plane point of view, which means when data is flowing, when traffic is flowing, it's a separate tenant for every customer. And as I said, right, the challenges that we have seen is if it's a multi-tenant architecture, one instance can actually overwhelm the other, or if for whatever reason, if it's sitting behind a single IP address, if one environment, because of whatever reason, the IP gets blacklisted, even you are impacted in a multi-tenant architecture. So what we've done is multi-tenancy is only for management, right? We don't use multi-tenancy for actual data plane traffic. We use we use a separate tenant for every customer, which allows you to scale. The most important thing is scale. When you use a cloud-delivered solution, the most important thing is orchestration and auto scaling. So depending on how many users you have, depending on how many, how much of bandwidth that you need to scale at a given point of time, the solution can actually scale and converge, depending on traffic patterns. So that's something that we do. So this is how it probably looks like from your point of view. Prisma Access becomes a central point which can connect to your mobile users, your remote networks. It can also connect to your cloud deployments. It could be AWS, Azure, Google, whatever it is. It can connect even to your SaaS applications. Prisma Access has a solution inbuilt called Prisma SaaS, which basically means if you're using things like, say, for example, GitHub or Office 365 or even G Suite, they're all leveraging. We can actually inspect the traffic which is sitting within the environment. That is something which is taken care of as part of the solution. I was talking about single pass architecture. Single pass architecture is all about making sure that we leverage all those capabilities that we have without compromising on performance, right? So as I mentioned, as far as zero trust is concerned, you need to have identity-based policies. On top of that, also identify what is the type of devices that users are using. It also, it's important to make sure that you inspect the endpoint, inspect the traffic coming from those endpoints and all that without compromising on security, and making sure that performance is maintained. So, single pass parallel processing allows us to have all those inspection capabilities without compromising on performance. As I mentioned, we are available in 100 different locations, 76 different countries. Even in India, we've got multiple different locations. So basically we have North, West, and South. So if there are users or you've got offices across India also, that can also be taken care of. Or if you are connected globally, we can provide you with connectivity. So the idea of this is that you'll have a local experience provided to you irrespective of where you are. Like, for example, if a few users of yours are in the US, it's not that they will come all the way to India just because you are headquartered in India, right? They can simply connect to your resources on the cloud. But that's the whole idea of SASE, right? It's allowing you to connect to your resources from wherever you are. That's the whole idea of SASE, providing you that network layer and that security layer to make sure that you are able to access your resources, in a safe and sound manner. So if a user is sitting in the US, we allow you to have multiple instances across the globe, and so that the users can have a local experience. So say, for example, you've got users in the US, some of the users, say, for example, you have in Germany, some of the users are sitting in Singapore, some of the users are in India. So a user sitting in the US will have a very US-centric experience, right? So for example, if the user goes on the internet, they will get google.com and they will not get google.co.in. And somebody who's in Singapore, when they try to access the internet, they will get google.sg and not co.in, right? Just a basic example. And also they will allow you, say, for example, if you've got AWS instances sitting in maybe in the US, which are hosted in the US, they can simply connect there and vice versa, depending on, I mean, there are multiple different scenarios that can happen because of cloud delivered, right? So point is, we allow you to connect irrespective of where users are, and that's what Prisma Access, that's the sort of scale that we provide and the availability that we provide. This is something which I mentioned. We provide you with multi-tenant management, but from actual data plane traffic, which basically means your actual data traffic, it's all separate tenant, right? We don't use a shared resource here. The reason being, as I said, if it's all shared, one instance can actually overwhelm the other, or if for whatever reason one of the IPs get blacklisted, your instance can also be affected. So that's the reason why we have a separate tenant for each customer from a data plane point of view. And the important thing is, again, scale. Scale becomes very, very important. Just to share, right? I mean, say for example, if you, the way we provide, Prisma Access is either via remote access, which is basically in terms of the amount of bandwidth that you have, or in terms of the number of users that can be connected. There are two different types of licenses that we have. So one is when you have a remote branch, and for whatever reasons you want to scale the bandwidth, you want to add more bandwidth to it, we allow you to do it. This is just a snapshot of an actual customer. I've removed the names here, but that's the amount of pattern. So what happens is, because it's cloud delivered and because it's auto scales, what happens is, whenever there is need for additional bandwidth, the solution automatically provisions additional bandwidth. And when there is no need for the bandwidth, it automatically scales down so that you don't have to bear the cost, right? So that's the power of Prisma Access. It can auto scale and scale up and scale down depending on the need of your environment. Similarly, for mobile users, depending how many users are connecting, but there can also be spikes, right? There can be a situation where suddenly a lot of users are connecting, and then once whatever the need was, it's completed, the number of users will disconnect, and it scales down. Similarly, for mobile users also, we can allow users to scale, which basically means there are multiple instances that can be created. This is one example where a customer, which is a very large global customer, has 50 instances from us, which is, again, it's part. I mean, I'm just sharing 50 instances, but it's all part of a single license, where at a point of a day, it scales to 300 instances or VPCs within the solution. I mean, that's the auto scale that we provide. And whenever a user is disconnected, it scales down. So point which I'm trying to drive here is, it is automated. The scale is automated. You can scale up, scale down, depending on what your needs are, because that's the power of cloud. I mean, one of the reasons why cloud makes more sense is because it allows you to scale and use resources whenever it's needed. And the most important thing from a business point of view, it allows you is, most important thing is reduced operational complexity and reduced cost. From a security point of view and a network point of view, the important thing is it's all together. It's all correlated. It's all integrated. You don't have to worry about how this traffic will connect to this traffic or how this network will connect to this network. You don't have to worry about all that. It's all integrated, and which basically means your operational costs and complexities are taken care of. The most important piece is security, again, which is providing a consistent security experience. So say, for example, if a user is sitting in a branch, or a user is sitting remotely, trying to access resources wherever they are, right? It should be a consistent experience from a security point of view. If the user was sitting in office, there are certain layers of security that the user goes through. Just because he's sitting remotely does not mean that you compromise on security. So that's, again, something which is taken care of. It's consistent security experience that we provide, irrespective of where the user is or where the data is, right? That's, again, something that we do. User experience is something which we focus a lot on, to make sure that we provide the best user experience to users, and they should not feel, because I think that's the need of the hour, right? In the current pandemic and going forward, a lot of companies have already announced work from home and all that. We want to make sure that people are productive. So it's important to make sure that we provide them the best experience. They should not feel that just because they're sitting at home, they're not able to work in a proper manner. So that's, again, something which we are very, very focused on. And speed and rigidity, right? And I spoke about the scaling, right? It's important to scale down depending on the needs of the hour, right? Businesses are very dynamic. Digital transformation, again, is also very, very dynamic, right? So it's important to have the speed and rigidity. That's, again, something that we offer from a business point of view. So it's all about making sure that we provide you with simplified management. It's the best in class security. We are well known for security. We are the one of the leading provider from a cybersecurity point of view. We've got different solutions today, and we are the best as far as cybersecurity is concerned. So with us, you get the best in class security also. And then scale and performance is something that's where the cloud scale comes in. So when it comes to a cloud delivered service, scale and performance is built into it. All that is taken care of as part of Prisma Access. Great. That's what I had today. I'm sorry I had to rush a few things, mainly because I was looking at the time. I just want to make sure that we have some time for a few question and answers towards the end. So yeah, that's what I had today from from the presentation point of view. I'm happy to take a few questions. Um, if, Depending on the time that we have. I think we've got somewhat 9 minutes. So happy to take questions. Just to share that if for whatever reason, if I'm able to if not able to respond to your question in this session, please write to us, and we'll make sure that somebody from our end responds back to your queries. Over to you, Parag.
Sure. Firstly, thank you so much, Riaz, for such an informative and enriching experience. And I'm sure this must have helped many of our participants to get clarified about this buzzword what we talked about, SASE. What personally I liked is the kind of use cases you have covered in your presentation. I believe those have already addressed the questions or the ambiguity we had around many aspects of SASE. So I believe that really helped every one of us. Before we take up some questions we have received on the QA section, I have few questions we have received already. I will just club them because I found those are closely interrelated. So I'll quickly just read out for those, and you may happy to answer those. So the first one I'm seeing related to zero trust, probably you already touched upon, but you may just throw light if you find if it is having a different angle. So the question says, how does it facilitate zero trust or trust of identification? And the second portion of it, how SASE can help us on part of zero trust when we use it in multiple cloud environment?
Yeah, great question. And zero trust is again something which is very close to us, very close to our hearts, because in an environment like the one that we are in right now, it makes a lot of sense. So as I said during my presentation, what is zero trust all about? Zero trust is all about making sure that we take into consideration multiple things. First, we take into consideration who the user is, which basically means identity becomes a very important aspect of it. Where is he coming from? Which location is the user coming from? What device is the user coming from? And then what resources does the user need to access? So let me take one by one. And again, all this is taken care by the SASE solution that we have, which is Prisma Access. We solve each of those problems. So the first part is identify the user, right? And one of the most common things that we've seen or customers have been asking for is making sure that there is strong authentication, because authentication is what allows us to identify the user, right? So we can use multi-factor authentication. We can use two-factor authentication solutions. I've seen customers use multiple different. I presented a slide from Okta. Okta is something. Okta is one of the solutions that we integrate very well with, or any other two-factor solution, right? I mean, we've seen customers using it. We've seen SAML technologies being used. SAML, allows you to scale really, really well from an authentication point of view. So the point which I'm trying to do is the solution allows you to identify the identity of the user and use it as part of policy, which means I can now write a policy for Parag, right? That's the way, that's the detailing that I get into. The other part of it is what location is the user coming in from and what device is the user coming in from, which basically means I need to also authenticate the device, right? That's the important thing. A lot of customers tell us that I only want to allow users to connect via the corporate provided device, right? Which basically means also fingerprint the device and check whether the device has the important patches. Like for example, does it have the latest antivirus patch, or does it have the certain checks which are very important to you from an organization point of view? So we allow you to do that too, which first of all is you can do authentication for the device. The most common technique that is available out there is using certificates-based authentication, right? So we allow you to put certificates. I mean, this is again very, very common, which basically means you can authenticate the user and also check for the endpoint certificate to check whether it's allowed or not allowed, or do any other checks, right? Check for antiviruses, check for whatever other patches or whatever other things that you want to check on the endpoint to make sure that yes, this is the device that needs to be connected. So that's the second aspect of it. The third aspect of it is making sure that the connectivity is safe and secure, which basically means we use IPsec and SSL connectivity, to make sure that the transport is completely encrypted, and then allow the user to connect to the actual resource which he has access to, which basically means we allow you the context of a user. Say, for example, you've got two different types of applications. Let's say Office 365, I'm just giving a hypothetical scenario, Office 365 and Salesforce. A user can have, all the users need to have access to Office 365 because that's where the email is, but only a certain set of users can access Salesforce because only the sales team is supposed to have access to Salesforce, right? So we can take into consideration the user, the device, which application the user is trying to access, which basically means, say, for example, Parag needs to access, Parag is from the cybersecurity team, and he needs to access Salesforce. So the policy you can write is Parag coming from this specific device can have access to Office 365, which basically means take into consideration identity, take into consideration the device. You can take into consideration the type of application, which is Office 365, and then allow him yes or no. And then some other user and say, for example, Parag is not part of sales, so he doesn't need to have access to Salesforce. So it simply says, okay, fine, Parag is part of cybersecurity team, or he's a CISO organization. He doesn't need to have access to Salesforce, so he won't have access to Salesforce. So and it's not just about providing the access part of it. All the communication that happens is completely inspected. We inspect everything, inspected for viruses, worms, vulnerabilities, threats, day zero attacks, even for DLP, DNS, all those things are inspected. So that's how the Prisma Access solution is a complete comprehensive SASE solution because it provides everything and is the most comprehensive zero trust architecture available out there.
Great.
I hope that answers the question.
Great. I don't think, Parag, we can take more questions. People are desperate for the fastest finger first. They are putting it on the chat. Okay, guys, quick announcement. So faster finger first is the link is coming up now. And Deepak, you may post. The first 5 people who fill will get 2,500 rupees voucher. And everybody else who fills the feedback form will get a special Diwali gift. Okay. Thanks, Palo Alto team, for that. And Riyaz, excellent session. So you have posted it, right, Deepak?
Yes, I have.
Cool. Let me quickly share my screen and couple of announcements that I need to make. Guys, if you need the certificate for this session, go to EliteCISOs.com website. Go to upcoming events, click on CP certificate link, and you will get to a form something like this. Fill this form, and the password is Diwali, right? Diwali is the password or the secret to download the form, and you will get it over your email. And the last thing that we got to do is the fortune wheel that we run every time. One lucky winner will get a Plantronics table or a laptop table. That's what we are giving away this time. So I'm going to run it, and everybody who registered, their name is over here in this list. So we will run it 5 times. Okay, if we do not get a winner within 5 times, then then it is draw, right? Then we will not spin it anymore, because last time we saw that we had to spin it for 6-7 times. So we will run it for 5 times, and hopefully the winner will be there. Okay, so with that, let me get started with this. And the first name is Ashish Khanna. Very nice. Ashish is there, I know. You got to type yes if you are there on the session. Type yes.
Because
oh, screen is blank.
Screen is, yeah, just reshare. Stop.
Oh, let me share it again. But Ashish Khanna's name came. Let me stop share. Let me share it again. I'm going to share my entire desktop now. And then I got to go to Chrome. And this is what I ran, right? So Ashish Khanna's name was there. I'm sorry, guys, you could not see it, but it is being recorded. So the recording will any which ways go to the YouTube, and you can see the winner. So that's how it is. I think we are almost, oh, great, 12 o'clock right now. Thank you everyone for joining this session. And next week, we will not have a session, right? So since March, we have been doing this session every single week. Now, next week, because of Diwali, we want to take a little bit break just for 1 week. And after that, we will be back again on our regular Thursday webinar. So thank you, guys. Happy Diwali to you. See you next time. Enjoy. Thanks, Palo Alto team. Thanks, Parag. Bye, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali. Take care. Bye.
Very happy.
Bye.